to our panel discussion on distributed R&D beyond just cost benefits. I'm Selina from Aspire Systems, and I would like to thank all of you here for taking time off your busy schedules to attend this session. We hope you find it really useful. So before we get started, I'd like to outline the structure for this discussion. So we'll take about 10 minutes or so to introduce the moderator, some introductory comments from the moderator and all of the panelists. And then we'll have about 40 minutes for the actual discussion. And about 5 to 10 minutes will be scheduled at the end of the session for a quick Q&A round. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in onto your chat window on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see that chat window there. You can just put your questions in. We already have some questions. We'll take them up during the course of the discussion, and any of it remaining that we have time to cover, we'll do at the end. So, yeah, I'd like to quickly give you an introduction about Aspire. So Aspire Systems is a pioneer in the outsourced product development space. We work with over 80 ISVs and software-enabled businesses and help them to build software products better and faster. We've pioneered the concept of product tiering, which is our unique methodology for building products better and faster. And we have more than 850 active customers, and we're present in the UK, the US, and India. So today we have with us an eminent lineup of speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our moderator for today's session, Mr. Pari Natarajan, who's the CEO and co-founder of Zinnov Consulting. Pari has led successful engagements for worked with several Fortune 1000 companies, and it's my pleasure to hand over to Pari at this point where he'll introduce himself and the rest of the panelists. Thank you.
Thanks, Selina. Hello, everyone. This is Pari Natarajan. I'm the CEO of Zinnov Management Consulting. We help global companies in optimizing their globalization strategy and help them set up partnerships as well as their own centers in countries such as India, China, and other Eastern European countries. We have been researching R&D globalization for the last 7 years, and we're seeing interesting trend happening over the last, especially over the last 18 months. Right after the recession, now companies really, when they set up the centers in India or in China, they looked at cost and then access to talent as the primary reasons. And now, over the last 18 months, we are seeing an increasing trend where companies are expecting innovation as well as enabling access to emerging markets from these operations. And if you look at just in India, we have over 670 companies which have set up their own R&D centers. And we have, again, at least about 50-odd companies which provide R&D services to companies across the globe. And outside of U.S., most of the companies are from Europe. And we have large companies such as Siemens, such as Nokia, Siemens, Ericsson, have large R&D centers in India and focusing predominantly on software technology. Even if they're companies which are working in a telecom sector, they're doing a lot more of software R&D in India compared to hardware R&D in India. So over next few years, we believe that a lot more of software R&D innovations are going to come from India and other locations. Obviously, there are a number of challenges faced when you have your own operations or work with a partner in these locations. So we would be spending some time in talking about the challenges, and some of our panelists today, Derek Wow from NCR, who's the Director of Software Engineering, Steve Jones is a Technology Director at Cybit, and Gauri Subramanian is the CEO and co-founder of Aspire Systems. All of them have practical on-the-ground experience in solving a lot of these challenges. So they are going to be talking about the challenges they faced and also share best practices which they use to solve some of these challenges. So it's going to be an interesting panel, and I would have each of the panelists introduce themselves as well as talk a little bit about their viewpoint on R&D globalization. Derek, do you like to start?
Yes, hello. I'm Derek Watt. I'm the Director of Software Engineering for NCR's Financial Services business. NCR are a Fortune 500 company, US-based. Recently just moved our world headquarters from Dayton, Ohio to Atlanta, Georgia. In the financial services space, our biggest products are ATMs. We're world leaders in automated teller machines. That's about over a $1 billion a year business. The R&D for that business, the financial services business, was originally based in Dundee in Scotland. For around the last 25 years has been based in Dundee in Scotland. And I've been in that organisation for 22 years, 23 years. Interestingly enough, it was a kind of offshoring that happened there, and the charter for ATMs moved from the US to Scotland because of cost reasons primarily, and then we've built a whole organisation in Scotland. So it's interesting for me as I work with organisations in India, seeing the parallels of how our organisation in Dundee grew from very similar drivers, started off low-cost engineering resources, access to talent, and has developed into leading the business for the last 25 years. From my experience of globalization, NCR's experience of globalization, I haven't been involved right from the start. But around 7 or 8 years ago, our software organisation looked at some outsourcing some projects through an outsourced partner in India. It was really a small number of projects managed in Dundee with engineers in Dundee, but with additional resources, project resources in India supplied by our third-party partner. After about a year or so of that, we were starting to look at a major re-engineering project, and that was a global re-engineering project to converge country-specific applications that were, we had different applications in France, Spain, Germany, US. We were looking to converge that, and it was a major challenge to find the number of engineers we needed. We had about 100 engineers in Dundee, and they just didn't have the capacity to do all the work that we were hoping to do in this re-engineering project. So our main driver for looking out to an organisation in India was that need for capacity to do this big program. So we actually looked to build our own organisation. So we started to build our own organisation in Hyderabad, and we learned a lot from our initial work with the outsourced partner, and started to build our own organisation. So for the last 5-6 years, that's been a very significant organisation growth, and we now have around 200 people in our facility in Hyderabad in India, doing mostly software engineering for the financial industry, but more and more of the other groups in NCR have started to join. So we have engineers in the financial space, we have engineers from my core organisation, but we also have engineers from country-specific organisations doing work for US, doing work for the French customizations, German customizations of our applications. We also have engineers from other industries. Now that we have a critical mass of people in Hyderabad, other industries in NCR, the payments industry team, the retail teams have started to put teams into our Hyderabad facility. The Hyderabad facility is very much a sister organisation to Dundee now, and we'd set it up like that. We didn't want it to be a subordinate organisation where projects were always run from Dundee and Hyderabad were just doing the basic work. We now have the situation where we have project managers in Hyderabad running projects in Hyderabad with project engineers. We even have situations where we have project managers in Hyderabad running projects with engineers in Dundee. So it's very much a sister organisation of the team in Dundee now rather than a subordinate one. And we're now moving to the next phase of where we're traditionally have always used buffer resources and contact resources with expertise around Scotland, and we're now looking to move to the next stage where we will have a core Hyderabad organisation with NCR that are looking for partners to provide that buffer work. So that's a little of the background.
Thanks, Derek. And I think that gives a good introduction. And we can have Steve, spend about 2 minutes on this introduction.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My organisation, Cybit, is kind of at the other end of the scale from Derek's company, NCR. Until very recently, we were a publicly listed company in the UK, what I think one would class as a large medium enterprise, turning over £25 million a year. We were recently acquired by a large technology fund in the United States of America, so we are now growing rapidly and moving into larger business and have a greater need for a larger development capability. The company's business is the remote management of assets. I guess the part of the business that's most familiar to people, or people are likely to be familiar with, is vehicle management solutions. We look after people's fleets of vehicles by tracking them on the road using GPS technology and giving fleet managers access to data from the vehicles and from their fleet generally through web access, simply by logging on to any computer anywhere in the world and using the internet and a browser to access the information about their fleets. We're one of Europe's biggest companies in this particular area. Our reason for looking to create an offshore development capability was really twofold. Increased capacity was probably our most significant reason for doing it, but followed quite closely by increasing productivity as well. We had an in-house team, a very small one. 4 or 5 years ago, we acquired 4 companies in a short space of time in 2007, 2008, and we had a sort of distributed small team in the UK, which wasn't particularly efficient, and we were growing too quickly for our in-house capability. So we looked to create a focused team offshore, not a large one. We started with 5 people. I think at the biggest so far we've been up to 8. And the use of that focus group was to just make it easier for us to make routine changes to our web platforms. Our ultimate goal is to turn our web delivery products into sort of a formal software as a service kind of situation. We're not there yet, but we're moving in that direction. And we've been reasonably successful. I would say our experience has been a qualified success. We did improve our capacity. Productivity, more difficult to say we improved that. I think we saw challenges with the management of an offshore team. We aren't a large organisation. We don't have the capacity to situate people offshore, nor do we have the financial capacity to have a permanent ODC member here. So we've experienced some issues with management and some other issues around domain expertise and just sort of process-related issues, I guess, in making the ODC element of our development team work to maximum efficiency. I think we've gotten a lot better in the last 12 months because we've only been doing this since early 2008. But I do believe that we've learned some pretty key lessons, which I'm keen to impart to other people so that others don't make the same mistakes if they're setting up an ODC. But generally speaking, I'm a fan of globalization. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think Cybit would always give a positive reference for using offshore development resources.
Thanks, Steve. And that was really uswe'll, and we're looking forward to a context from a smaller company and for Derek to give a context of for a larger company. And Gauri, can you have a few words of introduction?
Sure, definitely. Thanks, Pari, and thanks everyone for being here and the opportunity to talk today. So basically, I started and run a company called Aspire Systems. Essentially, what we do is we work with companies that want distributed global R&D capabilities, and we work with them to offer that capability out of India. As Selina mentioned in the start, we have worked with over 80 companies so far, and in different ways have contributed to extending and expanding their R&D capabilities and capacity. And what I wanted to do in a minute or two, Pari, is just to kind of give a flavor of the different ways, I mean the major ways in which we have, how we have seen our capabilities tapped. So if we, at a broad level, I think there are two ways in which we help companies. One is setting up an extended team here in India, which serves as an extended part of their R&D team. And that, coming back to the topic of this panel discussion, that's done predominantly for a couple of reasons. One is the capacity aspect, which Derek and Steve talked about, enabling access to talent. So we're able to do that, and but secondly, it's also a cost advantage. You referred to that in the beginning as well. I mean, the two major imperatives for companies to look at a global R&D location is for the access to talent and for the cost advantage. So for some customers, what we do is we work on an extended team model. But what I wanted to come to is the other key way that we have seen customers lately take advantage of global R&D capabilities is by looking to us for solutions, meaning there are specific problem areas where complete responsibility is in turn because of a set of capabilities that we have in certain specific areas. Customers are looking to hand off responsibility for certain specific aspects. So to be so when in that scenario, it's no longer just an extended team. What we need to do is deliver a complete full-fledged solution for customers for a certain business pain points that they have. So I can give a couple of examples just to make it more clear. One is the area of product sustenance. For example, with one of our customers who has more than about 20 different product lines, certain product lines are somewhat older in nature. I mean, they're towards the end of the life, but they still have a very valuable customer base, installed base, and that needs to be serviced, as well as bug fixes and enhancements need to be done for that customer base. And for this particular customer, what was happening is just the activity of keeping those products running and servicing those products was taking up substantially valuable innovation bandwidth from their core engineering team. So in other words, the core engineering team was not able to focus on the next generation products at their end, and instead was really, a lot of capacity was getting sucked up in servicing the installed customer base. So in this particular case, we helped take up complete responsibility of some product lines off their hands so that the core engineering team could be redeployed to really work on innovation for the next generation. So this is this kind of an example where it's about taking more full-fledged responsibility for end-to-end delivery. Just to add another example to that, which brings a different flavor. There's another customer that we're working with where they look to us in this particular case to develop the next generation product, because the next generation product was meant to be developed on a software as a service model, and this customer did not quite have the expertise in-house to be able to do that, and since we have a specific focus area on a software as a service capability, so we in this particular case help them develop the next generation product on software as a service while they continued sustaining and enhancing the current product portfolio. So definitely we see two broad ways in which R&D global capabilities that can be tapped, and that's how we work. Most of our engagements today are structured. One is the extended team model that I said, mostly used for accessing talent in India and for the cost advantages. But I think the key is also in my mind, to look at the capabilities of the solution provider or the service provider like us, and to see what areas we are strong at and potentially leverage those to enable innovation and being able to take advantage of the specific solution capabilities of service providers. So with those with those two broad experiences, I can give it back to you, Pari, and look forward to further discussions.
Thanks, Gauri. And it's very interesting that companies are really coming to you for specific expertise and not just for pure cost savings. And and going to the key benefits, right? One of the things we have seen, especially some of the companies world, some of the top companies. If you look at Google, Google actually did their finance.google.com. The product was completely built. The product management team was based out of India in the initial conceptualization phase. Once that was built, and then it was taken to the US. News.google.com was again a concept which was done in India and built out of India. Recently, Google had introduced a product called Map Edit. In this product, it is very insight came from India, where in India you really don't have direction signs like you have it in the UK or in other European countries. So what they did is they basically created a Wikipedia kind of model for editing maps, so people can place specific areas. If, for example, it is going to be a gas station in this particular area, it's going to be a temple or a police station in this area. So it made it easy for people to create their own maps, especially in emerging locations where the map doesn't exist. So this kind of technology was actually conceptualized, built in India, and then launched in other European countries as well as in the US. So companies which came in, some of these companies came in for cost reasons, have soon realized the talent available and as well as the innovation capability in these locations. I can give you examples of, Texas Instruments. They built a low-cost chip for the low-cost mobile phone completely from the India center. Intel recently released their multi-core Dunnington chip from the India center. So we are seeing the weak signals of innovation happening from these centers. So I would like to, question to the panelists, and Derek, if you can add, when you said cost was one of the primary reasons, and you've seen in Scotland how that moved from cost to business leadership, do you think those kind of benefits is going to happen in India as well, and how long is it going to take? If you can give us a few thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's going exactly the same. It's going to be exactly the same. Our business case was definitely driven on cost advantages, access to a large talent pool because we needed to hire 100 people, and the talent pool was there. But as a side benefit, I mean, the big challenge, and we'll talk about the big challenge, is about getting domain expertise. In my space, it's the ATM domain financial applications, the XFS standard, which is very specific to our world. But as a side benefit, we've now seen that we've got these people who have now got 5-6 years of this domain experience, and this year we have our first product manager in the Hyderabad site. He came from the engineering side of the business, and he's now a business manager looking at opportunities for solutions for emerging markets. So that wasn't something that we went out for, but it was a natural evolution, and it was the same natural evolution we've seen in Dundee. That we started off as just doing engineering with project managers based in the US. Then we got our own project managers, and it was the product managers and marketing people that were telling us what to do. And for the last 15 years, all the product managers have been in Dundee, in Scotland, and we're just seeing the same thing going to the Hyderabad team. And I use that to motivate my Hyderabad team and to they want to develop their career, and I can see, that is good. We've now got project managers running fairly significant projects, and this first business manager now starting to run a whole area of the business happening in India. So I think very definitely happening, and for us it's happening now, and it's all driven by the people having enough time to get the domain expertise, and for us it's 4 or 5 years in our industry to really understand the financial services business, the ATM, and be able to talk to customers. But these guys are now capable of doing that. So I think we'll see much more. We'll see more and more product managers. Initially, we focused in on emerging markets because he will be working with a lot of Indian customers. But I'm sure we'll start to have product managers who will be looking at global products as well.
Oh, great. Great. What about you, Steve? You have a smaller team, and does it provide, how else are you looking at benefits than the cost benefits and the productivity benefits?
I think there's a particular anecdote which, I think it's anecdotal evidence almost of how we've received innovation and also some, to a certain extent, product direction from the team in India. I mean, essentially we engaged with Aspire because we were looking at improvements in capacity and productivity, as I said earlier, but we found ourselves stumbling over that a little bit. Derek makes the point about domain expertise. That has proved to be a really big challenge for us, and almost as a byproduct of experiencing some difficulties there, not just with the domain but also with the complexity of the platform. I guess the lesson learned there is perhaps that we didn't do enough training of our offshore team on the core platform in the early days. But aside from that, we found ourselves in a situation where we weren't getting the productivity improvements quickly enough. And coincidentally, we won a greenfield development with a UK government organisation, not in our core space, but in we do some maritime tracking, and what we did there was turn to RODC and said, okay, this will be greenfield. We are in the process of developing the spec with the customer, and what we did was involve the ODC, look for innovation in design and in implementation, and also look for guidance on the way to go through the development, tools to be used, languages even in some areas. And it's been a very significant success story to the point where we've a UK government organisation now that won't sit down with us for a significant meeting around design or design modification or specification without somebody from RODC being in the room. So it's a very interesting lesson. It's been a big lesson for me, almost to the extent where I would suggest that we have been a lot more successful with our offshore development capability when we've not used it as an extended team, i.e. when we've used it for specific greenfield, specifiable, new business. I can't stress enough the quality of the innovation we've received and how that's produced a very high quality development cycle, which our customers are delighted with. So that's been our experience. Some of the challenges created, if you like, benefits. It's a kind of strange way of looking at it, but that's the case.
Sure. That's it. Yeah. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, so I would support that. I think that we've found the same sort of thing where we've tried to hand tasks over to India, where you're managing your offshore development from Dundee and we're just giving tasks over. We get much better results if we hand over whole projects and let them work through the requirements and the implementation. Obviously, once we've got a little bit of experience, but yeah, handing over projects rather than tasks is a much better approach, I think.
Oh, great. And Gauri, you would see a lot of your customers come in and they would ask you for an extended team to start with. And how do you take them through a journey where they're willing to give you a project? Clearly, what Derek and Steve mentioned is the project model. It's a lot more successful than an extended team model. So how have you made that a change for some of your customers?
Yeah, two things, Pari. I think that's a very interesting question, and I would definitely second what Steve and Derek just said, that purely as an extended team, the productivity that we can deliver would probably be on the lower side when compared to delivering a full-fledged solution or a project. I would absolutely second that. And there are multiple reasons for that. I mean, one of the very strong reasons is the amount of overhead effort that's required on the other end, on the US end or on the UK end, to really support an extended team model is higher. And it's almost like I might as well do it myself instead of asking somebody in India to do it, is the thought process that can come into somebody managing this effort there. So it's kind of very hard to always figure out where do you break and what do you give if worked on an extended team model. So I think, I think it's, I would absolutely go with what Steve and Derek mentioned, and that's our experience as well. Now, coming back to the question you asked, it's a real challenge, in fact, to begin with an extended team model and move to a solutions model, because it's almost like, let's do well at what we are telling you, and then we'll get to a full-fledged solution, right? I mean,
yeah.
So if I'm giving you a task and you're not able to do well at the task, how are you going to do well at the solution? I mean, sometimes it's a fairly hard thing to overcome that thought process. But I think what we really need to do is to really showcase ideas to our customers, showcase proof of concepts in areas where we are really good at, and say, hey, we have this particular thought that came to us, and do you think you might be interested to look at this, and just show them a small demo that we have done on our own time and things like that. So we'd had to do that while simultaneously trying to get the productivity up equivalent to the on-site team on the extended team model. So because all said and done, I mean, many customers do feel comfortable starting off with the extended team model and then moving on once that's proven. So it's on day one, it's probably difficult to get a solutions type project. So many times we had to start with an extended team, but do some proof of concepts and other things, have continuing discussions, and hopefully continue doing well and work through some of the initial challenges on the extended team model and so on, and then get to, finally get to the solutions state.
Okay, great. And I think, from what we hear, really the benefits are beyond cost and getting into innovation. And one of the clear model for innovation is giving a lot more ownership to the global team and have them manage the project, and over a period of time, give them a level of business ownership. And we also touched upon some of the challenges, and I want to go a little bit deeper on those. When we did a recent survey across productivity, one thing which clearly came out when we talked about 50-odd companies, predominantly U.S. companies, and asked them, what is your perception of productivity of your India center? So majority of these companies came back and said, hey, we think productivity is anywhere between 50 to 70% of global productivity. So now none of these companies had any measure on productivity. Right, but they had the perception was the productivity in these locations were lower, right? And so I just want to just throw this question to Derek and Steve, and what do you think in terms of productivity difference, and do you think it's a perception issue or a reality? And what are the steps you have taken to improve productivity in these global locations? Yeah, Derek, you can start.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the key to the productivity is domain expertise. It's not I don't think it's a big cultural thing. I think that we're having the same issue as we're moving our world headquarters from Dayton, Ohio to Atlanta. You've got new people who are good software engineers but don't understand the domain. So I think the first challenge is to try and get that domain expertise up. And that means, really working closely with the people who have the domain expertise to try and make sure that they really transfer that knowledge. So I mean that meant a lot of investment in co-location. We actually had a lot of long trips from our ODC, people from our ODC into Scotland. We had 6 or 7 flats for people to stay in. We went out and hired flats because we had so many people that were coming through and spending time in the city. We also did it the other way. We had objectives and measured that our senior managers, our middle managers, and our engineers were spending time in Hyderabad. People were measured on how often they were out there, how much time they were spending with engineers. And it was also important to encourage and incent the onshore resources to share their knowledge. I think there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, we're going to lose our jobs. We had to make it very clear that this was a capacity opportunity. It was an opportunity for them to teach someone how to do their current job so that they could get on to go and do something more interesting. And that's how it's worked out. I mean, we have roughly the same amount of engineers in Dundee as we had when we started, but we've now got this Hyderabad organisation, so it's not been a cost reduction in Dundee. It's been they're able to look at more interesting jobs. And I think that domain expertise is the first aspect of trying to get the productivity up.
Okay.
I've got a few other ideas, but I'll let Steve have a word as well.
Okay. Steve?
I mean, I echo everything Derek just said. I really do. I mean, I particularly like to repeat the point that it's not cultural in any way. It is domain expertise, and in my particular company's case, a very complex vehicle tracking platform where you can't touch the front end without you have a significant effect potentially on the performance of the platform. We're dealing with billions of pieces of point data, every day. It's a very dynamic environment, and in the early days, productivity from the ODC was poor, but it was always going to be. By using some training and by using pretty common techniques like bringing some of the senior people from the ODC to the UK, we got to the point where we made productivity acceptable, at least. But I do echo something also that Gary said. There is this terrible tendency to say it's easier to just get it done here than send it off to the ODC. So I think there maybe are some cultural issues inside my team here in the UK. It's almost a laziness, almost why spend a half a day on the phone describing what I want when I can get one of the team to get on and do it? Again, it's a reason why, in my particular instance, the extended team hasn't been as productive as it is potentially capable of being, that's for sure. I don't see it as being any weakness in the talent or the know-how or the skill sets or the environment of the people in the ODC. I see it as a practice thing. You have to get used to doing this, and you have to be structured so that you can do it efficiently. It's been a very interesting challenge.
And it brings me to the next question, right? And if you look at software development, it has gone through the change from pure waterfall model to various aspects of Agile methodology. And when you talk about Agile, the legacy of Agile says that you need to be co-located, and starting from your product management, technical architect, your engineers, your QA, all of them have to be together. What is when you have these teams sitting in India and other countries, how do you make it work in a distributed Agile development model? Have anybody tried that model? Just want to hear, how do you make it work? What are the challenges you face? Any of you could take that question based on your experience.
Yeah, we've had part of the re-engineering project we've focused on was to try and move to much more agile component-based development practices. We have had we've run pure agile projects, very storyboarding every day, very little written down, working on the expertise in people's heads, meeting every morning. We have found that only really works. The purest forms of agile only really works for the co-located team. Because we don't have that opportunity very often, we have tried to adopt a kind of halfway house. We aim at kind of 2-week iterations, that sort of level of agile iterations, not a daily iterations. It's a 2-week iteration, so we do some work up front, some degree of documentation, but much less documentation we did than we used to do in the pure waterfall. So halfway house, I would say, we have found that, following pure Scrum methodologies, storyboarding has been quite tough. But I think there's a halfway house from the full normal practices.
Okay, so you have to customize some of these practices and reduce the number of iterations and Scrum cycles. Okay, great. And Steve, have you, did you use Agile, and what has been your experience?
We actually we bit the whole thing off. We tried to eat the elephant in one go, in that we introduced Agile and the ODC at the same time, which was candidly a mistake. It took us, I would say, the better part of the year to get a distributed Agile model working. And exactly the same. In fact, it's astonishing how close my experience of this is to Derek's, given the difference in the size of our organisations. We had exactly the same issues. We've gone to a 2-week iteration, to a 2-week cycle. In fact, we ran it at a month for a while, but that just didn't work. But we were at 2 weeks. We are at 2 weeks. It fundamentally works okay. My personal view is Scrum, true Scrum, pure Scrum across a distributed team is bordering on impossible. But you can make it work. You can modify the practices and make them work very effectively.
And especially when you split the work in a way that the offshore team has their own Scrum teams, they can work independently.
Yes.
It probably work better. Okay.
Yes.
And Gauri, you
on a 2-week.
Yeah.
So go ahead. A two-week iteration is much better than some of our waterfall models. We were 6-9 months and then realised it was the wrong project. So we definitely don't want to go back to that again.
And one of the other things we have heard from our customers is, in general, the engineering teams in India tends to be a little bit hierarchical, where you have a senior technical leader, senior engineer, and engineer. What's in an agile model, it kind of makes it open because individual person is taking their particular use case and working on that. So it it kind of starts judging them and directing the same level. So it puts a lot of pressure on some of the senior resources to increase their capability much faster because the salary levels are higher as well. So it becomes a very, very good peer pressure kind of model. And Gauri, so you are working with a number of customers, 80-odd customers with various types of processes, and then you would have seen it all, right? What works, what doesn't work from a process perspective?
Definitely. I mean, I just was going to add to what was just said about distributed agile. The one very clear thing that we have seen is you cannot apply the very pure agile method to a distributed model, and we have to make some tweaks to it. Having said that, I think there are teams where we have over nearly 25 people on this side and a handful of people on our customers' end, where we have very successfully applied distributed agile methods to get successful product deliveries. So some changes definitely are warranted to the pure agile that has been described, but we have seen good success in terms of including even stand-up meetings where we have had the entire 25 people be there, but for a very quick stand-up meetings towards the evenings or towards the mornings where we do that. But then what we also do very clearly is in sprint -1, which is the sprint before the current sprint, we have some of the senior team members actually work on, and these are the modifications that I'm talking about to the pure agile. We have people work on pretty much getting down. We have something called grooming meetings where basically the user interface for the next iteration is pretty much finalized, and that gets then handed off to the development team, both to do the development as well as to do the unit test cases during the sprint, and ensure that the testing is also done during the sprint as well. So when we make some changes to the model, we actually find that distributed agile can work very effectively. But there actually needs to be a little bit of work done in the previous sprint to get ready for the following sprint to ensure that we can have a very productive outcome.
Okay. So that's a very good insight. And in terms of work which is done, right, so across the product like PDS Recycle, what we have seen is companies, when they came into India, they used to do quality assurance, testing, automation of testing. Then they started doing sustenance. And some of the companies are actually building, as I said, new products from India. From the panelist perspective, what have you seen in terms of the PDLC value chain? What kind of work could be done in these global locations? What has worked and what has not worked based on your experience?
And we took the same approach. I mean, we started off with the fairly basic development tasks, unit testing, test automation, testing, but now we have virtually everything. I mean, we actually find one of the challenges of the things that we haven't been very successful with is our teams the Indian teams like to be working with the latest technology, so we haven't found it very effective trying to encourage them to go and work on some of our legacy work, and C++ code, things like that. They would rather be working on the latest .NET, C#, so it's kind of an attrition issue when we're trying to get them to do support work. So I would say that was the only thing that I found, is that my team have a tendency, they want to be working with the latest and greatest technologies. I think that's a youth. I think that's again, I wouldn't read too much about a cultural aspect of this. I think we've got a very young team and they want to be working with the latest and greatest stuff. So for me, we work right across the board. We've got project managers, we've got designers, we've got developers, we've got testers now. Only the maintenance is about the only thing I would say that we don't have a lot of success with.
Okay.
Everybody still there?
Yes. Hi, Derek. I mean, I think Pari it seems got disconnected, so he should be joining back any minute.
Shall I pick up and give my experience?
Sure.
We I think have almost gone to the other end of the scale with looking increasingly towards India for our innovation. Two things that we are currently considering as a business in significant detail is turning our service into a full software as a service model, and utilizing cloud computing potentially in that process. What we're actually doing, and I think this is very interesting, is we are talking to the ODC has a lot more experience around this sort of area than we do as a business. So we are looking towards development and product leadership potentially from our ODC, which I think is fascinating. I would have said 2 years ago that was the last thing that we would ever have done, but that's exactly what we're doing. Taking it to its extremes, just for the sake of a debate like the one we're having here, is I could see a situation whereby, and bear in mind I'm talking about a medium-sized enterprise in the UK. I could see how we would potentially have development leadership offshore and support maintenance onshore. Now, that's not to trivialise the quality of the people you need in the UK to maintain a platform of this nature, but it is something that I would not have perceived possible 2 years ago, but I think is very possibly going to happen to Cybit over the next few years as we take the next step forward to making our product an SAS model.
Oh, very interesting, especially specific new domain expertise is being created in these locations. So you could potentially do end-to-end product development from India and other countries.
Yes, I don't believe it's practical for a platform such as Cybit's platforms to be supported offshore, but they have to be supported onshore. So the shift is almost to put the new development and the innovation offshore, and to keep the maintenance onshore. We were actually thinking about doing it the other way around when we first started this, which is interesting, I think.
Interesting. And Gauri, how have you seen, is there a trend changing with the newer customers in terms of the kind of work they want to do from an offshore location?
I think, we actually see both things happening, Pari, which is what I kind of began with. There are a certain number of scenarios, and we find this very interesting, where some of our customers have had, of course, their core engineering team develop a product, and because the product has been successful, that very same engineering team continues to really get sucked into the continuing enhancements and maintenance and so on. So I completely agree with Steve's point that transitioning of the support of that product is a fairly complex endeavor, only because there are so many hidden jewels that have kind of gone within the code base, and only people who are familiar with the code base really know how to handle it. But there are certain instances where customers have chosen to make a call saying the kind of domain expertise is really difficult for us to impart to you. But what we'll do is we will spend the time trying to figure out how to achieve a good transition of the current code base for the product, and then you can continue dealing with it fully from offshore. And then we will develop the next generation product. So we have seen that approach, as well as the other approach which Steve just mentioned, which is, we'll continue with the current generation while, why don't you see if you can develop the next generation kind of a product. So we actually have seen both instances, and there are, different scenarios in which either one makes sense. It also, I guess, depends on the domain. It depends on the preferences of the customer and many other aspects. But very interestingly, I think that much more than an extended team, which is good for a start, one of these is potentially definitely a way to go as the relationship matures. But we see both both sides of it, interestingly.
Okay, very interesting. And based on, if you're going to do some of your core activity, core innovation from these locations, how does IP related concerns affect you? Is that a concern, especially in a company like NCR, a publicly traded company and so forth? What kind of intellectual property concerns you have, and how do you address those concerns?
I think that was probably one of the primary reasons why we developed our own ODC instead of using a partner. We have very strong belief in trying to maintain our own IP. So we've, basically by having our own organization, it's NCR IP, we try. That was one of the main drivers, I think.
Okay. And so Steve, if you are working with a third-party provider, and how do you ensure that your IP is safe? And Gauri, if you want to add in terms of what are the best practices around intellectual property?
I mean, the reality is it's a challenge, isn't it? You can do all the appropriate things with contractual relationships and IP protection methodologies, but IP is two things to me. It is ownership of a product set, ideas, thoughts, code, whatever it might be, and it's actually true intellectual property, the brains that can maintain the thing going forward. The true intellectual property, almost, if you will. And I think we take the view that we're not creating something that is a world standard product, so we should be able to contain the IP risks within the scope of what it is we're developing. I could see it would be a completely different set of issues for NCR than it would for Cybit, that's for sure.
Okay. And Gauri, what kind of best practice have you used?
Yeah. I think as Steve was also mentioning, we do a lot of the very standard things, which of course I can go over, such as contractual protections and background checks and agreements with our employees, and restricting access to specific portions of the file server to people who need to work on the project, and access control and so on. But at the end of the day, I also strongly believe that it comes back to the credibility of the organization. I mean, very clearly, our business as a business is to work with software companies, and we worked with so many companies over a period of time, and any small issue with respect to IP can put our entire business at risk. So I think we having a good track record of over 10+ years, and being very clear about what our business is, which is basically helping companies do R&D and development. I think to that extent it comes back to the trust and the credibility and the references that we have available. I strongly believe it comes back as much to those as it does to the security and other protocols that of course are in place. But sometimes those can even be overcome, as we know, in this global scenario. So I strongly believe it comes back to the charter of the organization, our search and the track record in the marketplace is what I feel.
Can I just say something there?
Sure.
We when selecting our partner, we were incredibly careful around IP risks. It was right at the top of our list of things we had to worry about. We were looking globally. We didn't end up in China. We didn't end up in places in Central Europe. We ended up in India with a particular provider in India because we were confident that we would not experience significant IP risk by using that partner. I think that is extremely important, and I'm very pleased we did what we did. It is, I think, the linchpin of making sure that whatever you choose to do with your partner going forward, you don't have to constantly be looking over your shoulder, concerned that you will have IP issues. And I'd also say that I've experienced in the UK significant members of the software team walking away with IP in their head. Leaving me with a real issue. It's not unique to organisations offshore. It is easy for someone in the UK to go home and evenings and weekends develop a competing product. Very difficult to stop them practically. So I think it's a general problem, and I think you protect yourself contractually and in your choice of partner.
Okay. Great. And one question which came from some of the audience is, how is R&D globalization different for verticals like consumer electronics and telecom compared to software? So one of the things we have seen is in the infrastructure, the constraints in terms of manufacturing, prototyping capability, and so forth for areas around consumer electronics and telecom. The second area we have seen is in consumer electronics, a lot more work is being taken by the ODMs in China, that they're willing to do the software work at cost, provided that you buy the manufactured products back from them. So that's a trend you're seeing, especially at Direct. You have, you work with ATM missions. So what kind of constraints you face when you're building products, when the teams really don't have access to the latest infrastructure and the manufacturing capability?
Well, our team, it's not been a major issue. We actually have moved a lot of our manufacturing out to India as well.
Okay.
We have a lot of our. One of the challenges we have is just the amount of equipment we need to do testing and things like that. We just have to invest and ship a lot of units out there for the guys to work on it. The OEM market, the hardware side of things, we've only been involved in software outsourcing, so I don't really have a lot of experience in that area. But I'll open up and see if Steve or Gowdy have any more to add on that one. I don't have a lot.
Okay. Great. We are kind of winding out of time. We're going out of time. So I just want to summarize what we discussed, and then any thoughts from Steve or Greg. Basically, what the things we discussed is R&D is moving away from just pure cost benefit and moving towards creating innovation. And over the next few years, potentially new products could be coming out of these locations, and the maintenance could be done in a global location or vice versa. So there is definitely a movement towards innovation. The key constraints is truly the domain expertise is one constraint. Making distributed Agile or other related processes work in these locations, and giving some level of ownership in a project team level. How do you partition work so that the global teams could operate independently are some of the key topics that we discussed. Again, thanks a lot for sharing some of these. Any final thoughts before we close down?
I think you summarised it. I think the challenge is domain expertise. It's about building domain expertise, and then with that domain expertise, and if you can manage the attrition of your key resources, you'll see your team start to move from being just a team extension into project ownership, project management, and into driving the business, business management roles as well. And it's all about just building that domain expertise and making sure you don't have attrition of the key resources. For me.
Right. Yeah. nothing specific to add from my end, Pari. I think that that was a great summary. And from my end, we just want to thank all the participants and most importantly, Pari, yourself, Steve and Derek, for definitely taking the time to share your very valuable insights, which definitely I'm sure would be of use to the participants as well as to us as a service provider, just to get insights from all of you. I think it's really valuable to that you could have spared your time today. Thank you very much, Steve. Steve.
Sorry. I would just echo Derek's view that domain expertise is very key to this, no question about it. I think one can train. If I had my time over again, I would have spent a lot more time up front training people in exposing them to our core capability first. That would have been a good thing to do. I also would just say time. That don't, if you sit down and carefully work out a plan and you think it's going to take you, 6 months to get your ODC up to speed, double that and then double it again probably. It will take time, but it's worth it. That investment in time is worth it.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And it was a great conversation, and it was truly good to get some of your insights, hands-on experience. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.